Yeah, I'll react to that, sure. All right. Hey guys, next part. Greek War of Independence, part 2. I'm 95% sure this is the right one. No, it definitely is. Thank you, Greek, for sending me that over on Discord. Original link to the video, top of the description. My name's Connor, if you're new. Hope you guys are doing well. Are doing well. I can't talk right now. We're not restarting. No restarting of intros. I'm ready. Let's go.
To win freedom is no easy feat, but to keep it is even harder. In our last episode on the Greek War of Independence, we covered the initial insurgency against the Ottoman Empire and the establishment of the Hellenic Republic.
This is the right one.
In this episode, while Western European adventurers journey east with romantic notions of Homeric glory,
what's his name?
The Greeks begin to turn
Byron?
on themselves, and a wayward Egyptian governor assembles a mighty armada to crush the troublesome Hellenes once and for all. Maybe this wouldn't have happened if the Ottomans appreciated
Incoming sponsor, guys. If this interests you and you learned it here and you're interested in whatever thing they're selling here or they're sponsoring, being sponsored by, make sure to use their links, promo codes, only fair.
how hard the Greeks were working for them. And there's a lesson to be learned there. Father's Day is coming up, and our sponsor Manscaped is going to help you show your appreciation. Manscaped is the global leader in men's grooming and hygiene, and they've got the right tool for this job. Dad's probably
Why am I
tired
so
of the usual
orange
gifts,
in
so
this?
get him something really useful with the Lawnmower 4.0. It's a waterproof, cordless beard and body trimmer with super close ceramic blades and skin-safe technology for a perfect shave, with minimal nicks and cuts and next-level dad bod results. You can use it in the shower, and its 4000K LED spotlight makes sure no spot gets missed. That's not all though. Manscaped just released Boxers 2.0, underwear that combines fashion and function with a choice of 6 designs for the best boxers around. Its stitchless dual pouch design makes it ultra comfy and suitable for all body types. So that's another great option for your Father's Day gifts, or for anyone else you think deserves the better
Are those
things
the ones
in life.
that like cradle your
Get these
package?
quality gifts right now at
Separate
manscaped.com/kings, and you'll get 20% off plus free international shipping. In January of 1822, war with Persia and rising tensions with Russia had forced the Ottomans to deploy most of their standing army.
It's important to start the video off focused, clear. Are we ready, guys, boys? Let's do this.
Off plus free international shipping. In January of 1822, war with Persia and rising tensions with Russia had forced the Ottomans to deploy most of their standing army on their eastern and northern borders. But that did not mean Sultan Mahmud II had forgotten about his rebellious Greek vassals. In 1822, the Aegean island of Chios had among the most prosperous maritime industries in the Mediterranean. Up until now, the Helots had stayed out of the revolution, enjoying substantial autonomy and privileges under the Sultan. On March 9th, the sea wolf Lycurgos Logothetis claimed the island for the Republic, but he was met with a cold shoulder by the locals, who feared what violence his presence might bring to their homes. Unfortunately, they were right to be afraid. Overstretched the Sultan may have been, but he could not allow the insurrection to spread to an island so close to his heartland. Within 3 weeks, a large fleet, commanded by the Capitan Pasha, Kara Ali, had arrived on the isle, and what followed was genocide. Beginning in April, Chios was subject to indiscriminate slaughter of man, woman, and child alike, with approximately 50,000 killed and as many enslaved.
It's really hard for me to read and listen at the same time, but when they're quick enough, you know, they're short enough, I can look at it quick. Population is, to this day, the population is only half of what it was in 1822. That's crazy.
With approximately 50,000 killed and as many enslaved. While the Hellenes extracted a degree of vengeance when their fireships burned down Kara Ali's flagship on the night of June 18th, it was a hollow victory. The bloodbath at Chios inflamed the Western sympathies for the Greek cause, which had existed since the beginning of the war.
Lord Byron?
Much like today, people in 19th century Europe and America were taught about the cultural debt that Western civilization owed to Greece, and were naturally sympathetic to the modern Greek cause. Western governments, however, were not so on board with Greek independence. Still reeling from the French Revolution and its Napoleonic fallout, Europe's leading policymakers were obsessed with maintaining continental stability by preserving the inviolable authority of Europe's monarchies, which unfortunately for the Greeks also included the Ottoman Sultan. This, however, did not stop.
Interesting how it looks like pretty much the exact boundaries of Ottoman Europe, Southeast, the Balkans, Ottoman territory is like exactly on the border of Bosnia and Herzegovina and Croatia. Like it's that looks like the exact border of Croatia today.
Also included the Ottoman Sultan.
Is that the modern Hungary border too?
This, unfortunately for the Greeks, also included the Ottoman Sultan. This, however, did not stop many young adventurers from journeying east, irrespective of their government's wishes. These knights-errant came from all throughout Central and Western Europe and America, and were collectively known as Philhellenes, romantic lovers of Greek culture. Of all the Philhellenes, by far the most famous was Lord Gordon Byron, an English aristocrat and poet who abandoned his luxurious life to fight directly alongside the Greeks, while donating a considerable amount of his vast family fortune.
Byron's additional exploits included falling madly in love with a teenage Greek boy who was only using Byron for his money, and adopting a 9-year-old Turkish girl to save her from slaughter by rebel hands. So, okay.
To fund
So what do I say to that? Okay.
Cause.
So, all right.
Following the massacre at Chios, June to fund the Hellenic cause. Following the massacre at Chios, a 2,000-strong force, led by the provincial president, Alexandros Mavrokordatos, marched north to garrison Arta. This force was accompanied in consort by a small battalion of Philhellenes, led by the Swabian veteran Karl von Norman Ehrenfels. Hearing of this, the Ottoman Albanian general, Omar Varoni, marched north with 10,000 men. In the following Battle of Peta, the Greeks and Philhellenes used Napoleonic tactics to inflict heavy casualties on the Ottoman.
Sorry, can't help but point out what that just said. Again, I keep being like, all right, don't worry about this. It's only going to distract you from the main story. But I can't help it now. Rioni was known for his sadistic practice of making a game out of hunting Greek peasants, capturing them, giving them a head start to run away, then running them down on horseback as if they were animals. Jesus Christ.
The Greeks and Philhellenes used Napoleonic tactics to inflict heavy casualties on the Ottoman cavalry. Nevertheless, the sabotaging efforts of a turncoat, Gogos Bakolas, allowed Varoni to win the day. The Greek...
You guys, I'm going back like 30 seconds, okay? I'm not reading the things below, okay? As interesting as they are, and as helpless I am from not being able to... I'm missing the main story, and
veteran Karl von Norman Ehrenfels. Hearing of this, the Ottoman Albanian general Omar Varoni marched north with 10,000 men. In the following Battle of Peta, the Greeks and Philhellenes used Napoleonic tactics to inflict heavy casualties on the Ottoman cavalry. Nevertheless, the sabotaging efforts of a turncoat, Gogos Bakolas, allowed Varoni to win the day. The Greeks were forced to retreat, while nearly 2/3 of the European volunteers were slaughtered. Expansion into Epirus was a failure, but in other theaters, the Greeks experienced more success. Athens had been under siege since the beginning of the war, but in June of 1822, the Ottoman garrison holding out in the Acropolis surrendered. The city was a far cry from the glory days of Pericles, having become something of a squalid backwater in modern times. But its symbolic significance to the Hellenic nation was not lost on those who fought to liberate it. The following month, a punitive Ottoman expedition, led by one Mahmud Jamali Pasha, advanced into revolutionary Greece with a massive 23,000-strong army at his back, aiming to bring the Peloponnese to heel. Jamali's campaign began promisingly when he scoured Thebes and captured Corinth. But before long, his expedition would become one of the worst Ottoman military disasters in history. Taking charge of the defense, the old warlord Kolokotronis initiated a scorched...
Before this, Jamali had tried to take Argos, which was defended valiantly by Demetrios Ypsilantis, before he successfully snuck out of the fort with his men on the 12th day. I can't help sometimes but just read it.
...would become one of the worst Ottoman military disasters in history. Taking charge of the defense, the old warlord Kolokotronis initiated a scorched earth policy, which left the massive invasion force trapped and without food in the sweltering plains of Argolis, all while rebel snipers and raiders picked at their dwindling supply lines. Jamali's force was then utterly annihilated in the mountain passes outside the village of Dervenekia in early August. Of Jamali's original force of over 23,000, only 6,000 returned to Ottoman territory. The victory at Dervenekia was a triumph for the Hellenic cause, but it cast a long shadow as thinly veiled rivalries began to boil to the surface. After his defeat at the Battle of Peta, President Mavrocordatos had lost prestige, while in contrast, Kolokotronis' star was ever rising after his annihilation of Jamali's army. This exacerbated a long-growing rivalry between the central government, led by Mavrocordatos, and the military leaders, led by Kolokotronis, which stemmed from the central government's attempts to rein in warlords, who had been operating functionally independently without any governmental oversight since the beginning of the revolution. By the end of 1822, these tensions were threatening to come to a head. Mavrocordatos' one-year term as provisional president of the Hellenic Republic was about to expire, and the National Assembly was overdue to meet, not just to elect a more permanent president, but also to fill a sweeping array of legislative and executive governmental positions. On April 10, 1823, both factions convened at the town of Astros for the voting. Surprisingly, it went fairly smoothly. While Mavrocordatos was not re-elected, he was appointed as head of the legislative body. The Maniot Sea Lord, Petros Mavromichalis, was elected president in his stead, and in a deliberate effort to rein in Kolokotronis and his war captains, the old Cleft was offered the position of vice president of the National Assembly, which after some cajoling he accepted. This was fortunate, for in the summer of 1823, the Greeks were reminded of their common enemy as Mustafa Pasha, the Ottoman governor of Shkoda, advanced across the Pindos Mountains. Mustafa's advance was met by the Soliots, Orthodox Albanians from Epirus. Their leader, Markos Boutsaris, martyred himself at the Battle of Karpenisi.
What is it? Anecdotally, the Battle of Karpenisi was fought almost exclusively by Albanians, Catholic and Muslim Albanians on the Ottoman side, and Orthodox Suliot Albanians on the Greek side. What is it with Albania? I always figured, my guess was like, how is Albania kind of culturally distinct more so from the other Balkan countries, in that it seems to be have a more Muslim Ottoman style. Like, it feels like as the Ottoman Empire broke up, a lot of the more traditional, like, Ottoman aligning and culturally Ottoman people kind of moved to that area in Albania, and that's why it's kind of distinct, despite being separated by a few, North Macedonia, Greece, Bulgaria, from modern-day Turkey. And I imagine it was just kind of a natural separation as the Balkans broke up the Ottoman influence. But it seems to be more ingrained than that. And it seems like Albania being distinct was already a thing, even as it was a part of the Ottoman Empire. Does that make sense? My question I'm asking here. How did Albania become culturally more aligned with, say, Turkey, maybe, than their immediate surrounding Balkan neighbors? Does anyone understand my question here? I have to pee quick. All right, I'll be right back. All right, I'm back. I washed my hands. I just went back like 15 seconds.
By the Soviets, Orthodox Albanians from Epirus. Their leader, Markos Botsaris, martyred himself at the Battle of Karpenisi, while his Epirot army, a tenth of the Ottomans in number, killed thousands of the invaders. Nevertheless, the Pasha's advance continued, joining forces with the infamous Oma Veroni and laying siege to the Greek stronghold of Missolonghi. However, this encirclement would be broken when the Soiliots, who had since joined the city's defense, managed to plunder the Ottoman food supply, forcing them to retreat. The day belonged to the Greeks, but the triumph at Missolonghi was a victory that would bear bitter fruit, for as Ottoman incursions into the Peloponnese had stopped for the time being, the Hellenes no longer had a common enemy to unite them. Theodoros Kolokotronis had initially joined the Senate of the Hellenic Republic as vice president in order to help the central government control the independent warlords of the Peloponnese. But soon, the old ex-bandit began to chafe in his new role, mainly because he was losing the veneration of his men, who had now begun to see him less as a great warrior and more as just another politician, like that four-eyed, westernized, panty-waist Mavrocordatos. In October 1823, Kolokotronis resigned from the executive, officially severing his pretense of cooperation with the central government. Then, when the state finance minister, an open supporter of Kolokotronis, was dismissed from his position for imposing an unconstitutional government monopoly on salt, the Greek body politic finally broke. In retaliation for his firing, Kolokotronis' son, Panos, raided the Senate in Argos while it was in session, forcing them to disperse with threats of beatings. In retaliation for this, Mavrocordatos, still the rudder behind the ship of state, oversaw the dismissal of President Mavromichalis, who was Kolokotronis' last major supporter in the central government. Thus, while Mavrocordatos appointed a new puppet, Horchios Kondoriatis, to be his president, Kolokotronis and Mavromichalis, the foremost military titans of the Greek Revolution, started a rogue government in Tripolis. Amusingly, one way in which the two rival governments undermined each other was in their competing attempts to win the affections of the region's biggest sugar daddy, Lord Byron.
Really?
As Mavromichalis, Mavrocordatos and Kolokotronis each had letters written to the British aristocrat pleading for his money while persuading him not to donate to their political rivals, Byron became utterly exasperated with the disunity of the Greek cause. This aggressive courtship would end when, some months after he personally joined the defense of Missolonghi against the forces of Mustafa Pasha, the eccentric British tycoon passed away after a long bout of violent fever. Perhaps the best thing Byron could have done for the Greek cause was die, for it gave the young Hellenic nation a foreign martyr, and helped turn the needle of diplomacy among the great powers of Europe further towards supporting the Hellenic cause. Nevertheless,
How old was he, Lord Byron, when he died here?
at the time of his death, the Hellenes were still a small, poor, and bitterly divided people. Indeed, the quasi-Cold War between Kolokotronis and Mavrocordatos' factions would soon turn hot. Initially, the central government was able to mostly bloodlessly siege the cities of Argos, Corinth, and Tripolis. Then, in June 1824, Panos Kolokotronis surrendered Naplion to the Kondoriotis regime. This effectively ended the First Civil War. But that following autumn, a minor revolt
Most of Kolokotronis' support came from the warlords in Moria, while the central government support came from magnates in central mainland Greece and the Aegean Islands.
broke out, ended the First Civil War. but that following autumn, a minor revolt broke out in Capariscia over governmental taxes on local produce, which sparked a second conflict. This one was bloodier, resulting in the central government killing Panos Kolokotronis and ultimately capturing Theodoros himself, imprisoning him in a fortified monastery on Hydra Isle. Following this, Mavrocordatos reassumed the presidency of an ostensibly reunited Hellenic Republic. But his victory would be a Pyrrhic one, for the young Greek state was weaker and more impoverished than it had ever been. And on the other end of the Mediterranean, in Egypt, a vast armada was forming. Back in 1798, when a certain Corsican artillery officer had launched an invasion of Egypt, an ethnic Albanian pasha named Mehmed Ali played a crucial role in repelling his Grande Armée. In subsequent years, Mehmed Ali would navigate treacherous political waters to become the governor of the Ottoman.
I love when different parts that I've learned in videos of their own, and I think more Epic History TV than Kings and Generals videos. Just when they join together, and I feel like I'm filling in the gap. I'm saying this so poorly. I love these parts where I learn about something from a different video and then learn about something completely different, and then they connect. I love it.
Role in repelling his Grande Armée. In subsequent years, Mehmed Ali would navigate treacherous political waters to become the governor of the Ottoman province he had helped liberate. Like so many other provincial notables across the empire, the Albanian lord would take advantage of the declining power of the Sultanate to establish a quasi-independent fief in his new realm. And by virtue of sitting on the richest breadbasket in the Mediterranean, quickly became perhaps the most powerful ruler in the Near East, an Ottoman vassal in name alone. Meanwhile, in Istanbul, Sultan Mahmud II was growing increasingly infuriated at his Greek quagmire, and he needed help. It may have pricked his pride to plead a vassal for aid in putting down what was essentially a small peasant rebellion in his poorest province, but at this rate, he had no choice.
Yeah, it seems like I would assume that sort of that scale of infighting that happened would have been reserved for maybe a time period where your enemy is more subdued than it was. And I mean, what are you going to do when, tensions are flaming? But you would think that it would be like if the Japanese, when the communists and nationalists in China joined together to fight the Japanese, and it'd be like if they continued their civil war before Japan is even pushed out of their country, kind of idea.
However, Mehmed Ali's aid wouldn't come free. So it was that the renegade pasha was promised that whatever land he helped subdue would be added to his already massive autonomous realm. And with that, Egypt entered the fray. Mehmed Ali first intervened in the Greek insurrection in 1822, when the Sultan promised him Crete in return for crushing the rebels on that island. Although the Cretans put up a fierce resistance, they were ultimately smothered by the end of 1823, and Crete was restored to nominal Ottoman control as part of the Albanian Pasha's de facto Egyptian empire. Buoyed by the first major success against the Greeks since the rebellion's onset, the Sultan leaned on Mehmed Ali further, promising him control over the Peloponnese in exchange for the total annihilation of that nucleus of rebel activity.
It's working for him. It's like, all right, we'll give you this if you take them out. They took him out. It's like, oh, all right, we'll give you this if you take them out.
On July 19th, 1824, 450 warships...
It's like I understand there is stuff to gain on both sides, but I mean, it seems to be very much the Sultan's advantage here in that he doesn't have to, he just lets him take care of it. And I assume even in the end, if they do control it, they can still take it back.
On July 19th, 1824, 450 warships and transport vessels, ferrying 14,000 European-trained infantrymen and cavalry, perhaps the first truly modern army to be raised in Ottoman lands, set sail from Alexandria. At its head was Ibrahim Pasha, the eldest son of Mehmed Ali, an experienced warrior, battle-hardened from putting down rebellions in Arabia. Ibrahim navigated his armada into the Aegean, leaving a wake of Hellene blood behind him. The islands of Kassos and Sara were subdued quickly, a devastating blow to the Greeks, who relied heavily on them for naval power. Nevertheless, the Hellenic Republic, which was at the time still mired in the Kolokotronis Mavrokordatos civil war, did nothing to stop Ibrahim's advance. On February 11th, 1825,
granted a Greek fleet from Hydra and managed to temporarily halt the Egyptian fleet in a naval battle off the Bornholm Peninsula, 1824.
Nothing to stop Ibrahim's advance. On February 11th, 1825, the Egyptians finally made landfall in the Morea. Seeing Ibrahim as no different than the likes of Jamali or Mustafa Pasha, both of whom they'd handily repulsed, the Greeks arrogantly disregarded the threat. A fatal mistake, for Ibrahim possessed a ruthless logistical and tactical genius, the likes of which the rebel nation had never seen.
Okay.
Within a few weeks, Ibrahim had conquered the old Phoenician fortress of Methoni, while the Hellenic Republic, still busy finishing up its second civil war, did little to resist. The Egyptians then advanced on to take the twin fortresses of Old and New Navarino. Having finally subdued Kolokotronis by this point, the Hellenic government finally put up serious resistance, but their 7,500 strong army was crushed outside the village of Kramidia on April 19th. The fortresses of Navarino fell a month later, forcing the Greeks to come to the bitter realization.
American? George Jarvis, an American Philhellene, was among Navarinos' defenders. When the fortress fell, he rejected an offer by Ibrahim Pasha to serve under him.
Navarino fell a month later, forcing the Greeks to come to the bitter realization that the Egyptian foes they had underestimated were in fact far tougher and more professional than the mostly Albanian mercenaries they had been fighting previously. After his initial success, Ibrahim pushed deeper into the Peloponnese at a blitzkrieging rate. Now in a panic, the Central Hellenic government quickly released Kolokotronis from his imprisonment, gave him full amnesty, and made him commander-in-chief of the Greek forces. This was no time to keep the Republic's best general behind bars. Now reconciled with his former political enemies, Kolokotronis managed to slow down Ibrahim's advance through guerrilla tactics, and even deter him from advancing on the provincial capital of Nafplion. However, the Egyptian advance could not be stopped entirely, and by the end of 1825, most of Peloponnesos's major towns were back in Ottoman hands. Meanwhile, at sea, the formerly deadly Greek navy was becoming less effective as Ottoman and Egyptian methods adapted to their fireship techniques. At the onset of 1826, Ibrahim Pasha and his Egyptian legions were the new masters of the Peloponnese, and by all metrics, the Hellenic Republic was hanging on by a thread.
I wonder if this is reaching a point where I see a lot in learning, in these history videos, is that the Sultan sees this guy, offers him to do something, he does it extremely well, and then he offers him another thing, he does it, and he's almost too good, and he's so good he starts to threaten the Sultan. So I hope that's not the same situation where it's like, all right, you're too good now.
And his Egyptian legions were the new masters of the Peloponnese, and by all metrics, the Hellenic Republic was hanging on by a thread. In our next video, the Greeks will reach their darkest hour as Ottoman forces advance upon Missolonghi, the fortress which had twice repulsed them. However, as the candle of rebellion threatens to be extinguished entirely, hope shines over the horizons as the great powers of Europe, France, Britain, and Russia finally join the fray. Our series on the Greek War of Independence will continue, so make sure you are subscribed and have pressed the bell button to see it.
Great episode, as always.
Please consider liking, commenting, and sharing. It helps immensely. Our videos would be impossible without our kind patrons and...
Yeah, fantastic. Kings and Generals is a phenomenal channel. They're over 3 million subscribers, deserved. Yeah, this is very enjoyable. I love learning about this stuff, especially when I'm learning about a new area and time in history where I knew very little to nothing about, and it connects to adjacent historical stuff that I do know a little about. It just filling in that gap. I'd always call it like clearing the fog of war. If anyone plays like a video, you know what I'm talking about. It's just super satisfying, stimulating, whatnot. Yeah, love you all. Hope you guys are all doing well. Would appreciate any comments down below, and I'm glad to keep watching these videos for sure. Hope you guys are doing well. We'd love for you to like and subscribe. See you next video. Bye, guys.